In a letter released late last night, the White House Chief of Staff all but lectured the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee over a possible deal with Iran. Senator Bob Corker is drafting legislation that would give Congress an up or down vote on any deal over Iran's nuclear weapons program. The White House, as you might imagine, doesn't like that very much, saying that such legislation right now would have a, quote, profoundly negative impact on the ongoing negotiations. Today comes as Secretary of State John Kerry arrives in Switzerland to continue talks with the Iranians. So let's bring in Fox News contributor Gillian Turner, formerly of the White House National Security Council. Gillian, always nice to see you. Do you agree with the White House that Congress is making this more difficult?
Well, there's two issues really at stake here. I think this letter from Chief of Staff McDonough was really the White House's way of punching back, asserting some presidential prerogative when it comes to making foreign policy here. I think they're right to do that because I think that the 47 senators who signed on to the initial letter to the Iranian regime absolutely overstepped their bounds. There's a more important point, though, here, which is one of, as long as we continue to air our dirty laundry before the entire world and highlight for everybody just how vitriolic and dysfunctional our political system at home has become, we're going to undermine only our own national security interests.
And when you say it's going to only undermine things, in the sense that Iran and others who wish to do us ill are going to be able to exploit the divisions?
Absolutely. I think it's a mistake for the United States to think that countries across the world, our adversaries and our allies, aren't watching, that they aren't aware of just how dysfunctional things have become, and that they're not looking for opportunities to take advantage of the situation.
The White House has sort of promised that in some way Congress is going to have a say over an Iran deal. Do you believe that, or is there enough loopholes that effectively the administration can make an end run around Congress, and if they don't have 67 votes in the Senate for a veto-proof override, that it's going to be very difficult for Congress to actually have any real effect on whatever this deal is?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real prospects for this deal rising to the threshold of some kind of an international treaty where the administration would legally actually have to bring Congress on board. But there is a lot of room for the administration to act on its own prerogative here. And I don't think that that's necessarily sidestepping the Congress. There's a long and storied tradition regarding the president's prerogative to execute foreign policy based on his own will. And I think that that's something that Congress and the president are really grappling with in a spectacular way right now.
Something we touched on yesterday, it seems as though that the days have passed of, say, Jesse Helms and other sort of great leaders up on Capitol Hill who really did have a say in foreign policy, either between sheer force of will and intellectual magnitude or because they were willing to execute and use the power of the purse to make a change. What's changed, do you think, now all of a sudden that you have a lot of congressmen who are saying things but not really doing that much when it comes to foreign policy?
I mean, my personal take on that situation is that, as you mentioned, we are on both sides of the aisle lacking these kinds of great leaders with long histories of foreign policy and national security expertise who can stand up, advocate and articulate positions very clearly and act as a rival or a kind of counterweight to the White House. I think this is because the nature of the political system these days in Washington, as we all know, really boils down to special interests and who's kind of, at the end of the day, supporting one congressman or another.
Well, we'll see what happens, certainly, if Congress gets a vote. Turning now to something else going on in the Middle East right now. The State Department has canceled all consular services as of now at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh and at U.S. consulates in Saudi Arabia for today and Monday. Only essential personnel will now be in those buildings. The decision comes because of an FBI tip involving a possible car bomb threat. A security message also went out from the State Department saying, quote, it urges U.S. citizens to carefully consider the risks of traveling to Saudi Arabia, limits non-essential travel within the country, and says regardless of where you are, it's always advisable to keep your security and situational awareness on high levels. The question of all the places in the Middle East you'd think there would be problems for Americans, it's not in Saudi Arabia where you'd think their intelligence communities have enough of a control on the militants who might try to perpetrate one of these attacks.
That's absolutely right. I think there's two things here that are leading to this sort of heightened security situation. Number one is the fact that Al-Qaeda and its offshoot organizations have, particularly over the last decade, used Saudi Arabia as a kind of forward base for a lot of its operations. The other thing is that you know, they've been a long time, the Saudi monarchy has been a long time staunch ally of the United States.
So for al-Qaeda to pull off an attack there would be a huge coup for them.
It would be a massive success. I mean, it would be a massive sort of feather in their cap, right? I mean, the idea that while the Saudi monarchy is actively participating in the U.S.-led anti-ISIS terror coalition, to pull something off would be tremendous for them.
Well, we'll see what happens. Certainly the State Department took it seriously enough to shut things down. Gillian Turner, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Uma?
And more now on this.